A few weeks ago, I traveled to Alaska to take pictures of the northern lights. I thought it would help me become a better wildlife photographer. I found a small cabin in a remote village. It was peaceful, just me and the wilderness. I like solitude, but sometimes it can be a bit too much. I haven't stopped thinking about what happened next. On my first night, I set up my camera equipment. The stars were bright above me, but then I noticed something strange on the cabin door. There were scratches on the wood. They looked fresh, like something had tried to get in. Maybe it was just an animal. I stepped outside, feeling the cold air hit my face. I listened carefully, but only silence surrounded me. That didn't seem right. I was alone, but I felt like someone was watching me. The next night, odd things began to happen. I heard soft footsteps outside my cabin. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. I peeked through the window but saw nothing. The same heavy quiet weighed down the area. My heart raced and chills ran down my spine. When I stepped outside, I found more scratches on the door. I thought about leaving but pushed the idea aside. This was my chance to capture something beautiful. I was supposed to be brave. Each evening after that, the footsteps returned. I began to see faint shadows darting along the edges of my vision. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. During the day, I tried talking to the locals. They seemed hesitant about the woods. They looked at me like I was crazy for asking. I just wanted answers. Maybe I had wandered too far into this eerie wilderness. On the fourth night, while I aimed my camera at the northern lights, I thought I heard whispers in the wind. I called out, but only my voice bounced back to me. It was unnerving, like something was taunting me. I tried to shake it off. As the cold seeped into my bones, I started to wonder if I was going to be okay. Then came the last night. I stood at the edge of the woods staring into the darkness. Suddenly, I heard something behind me. My breath caught in my throat. I turned around, but there was nothing, just the trees swaying slightly. Just then, an icy voice whispered my name. Panic surged through me and I bolted back to the cabin. As I slammed the door shut, I knew whatever had been out there was still watching. I huddled against the wall, feeling the rough grooves of the wood. I could hear my heart pounding. The shadows pressed closer, and I waited for dawn. Night dragged on. When something scratched the door again, I pulled the blankets over my head. I never did find out what was really out there. The next morning I packed my things quickly and left that cabin behind. But the whispers followed me. They still whisper my name. The drive back to civilization felt surreal. The whispering followed me like a lingering shadow. I played the events over in my mind, but couldn't make sense of any of it. I hoped that leaving would somehow put distance between me and whatever was out there, but I still felt that weight on my chest. As the icy landscape transformed into the comforting familiarity of small towns, I decided to stop at a diner. I needed to eat. Maybe a warm meal would help clear my head. The place was empty except for an elderly couple at the counter. They glanced at me when I walked in, their eyes filled with concern. I ordered coffee and pancakes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. I overheard the couple talking quietly, casting cautious glances in my direction. It made me feel uneasy. I finished my meal quickly and decided to confront them. "Do you know anything about the woods around this area?" I asked as I approached their table. The man shifted nervously in his seat. "Why do you ask?" His voice trembled slightly. I took a deep breath, wanting to dismiss my fear. I was just in a cabin there. I heard things, strange things. The woman shot her husband a glare. "You shouldn't have been out there. People go missing." "Missing?" I repeated, feeling a chill run up my spine. Their words only added to my anxiety. "We don't talk about it. It's better that way." The man's face was pale, and I could see he wanted to say more. But the woman shook her head at him. I pressed for more, but their fear was palpable. They changed the subject and returned to their meal. I felt more alone than ever. I took my coffee to go and stepped outside, where cold air nipped at my face. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed something on the ground. It was a scrap of paper, crumpled and stained. I picked it up. As I unfolded it, my heart stopped. It was a map, marked with several points and a large red X deep in the woods. I glanced back at the diner. Was this someone's idea of a joke? I didn't want to go back, but curiosity nagged at me. What did the marks mean? Did they lead to whatever had been haunting my mind? Before I knew it, I was gripping the steering wheel tightly, making my way back toward the woods. As I drove, the memories flooded back, rustling leaves, whispers, shadows. The closer I got to the site of my former terror, the more the panic bubbled up inside me. But I couldn't turn back. I'd find answers, or at least face whatever was lurking in the dark. Once I arrived at the edge of the woods, I parked and looked up at the looming trees. They seemed to beckon me closer. That's when I saw it. Something moved in the shadows. I squinted, straining to see through the darkness. A figure. It was just beyond the tree line, and it felt like it was waiting for me. I stepped out of the car, a sense of dread washing over me. The whispers returned, louder than ever, echoing my name. Panic surged once more. What had I gotten myself into this time? My breath hitched as I stood by my car. The figure was indistinct, blending into the darkness under the branches. My heart raced. I wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, or my mind playing games after everything I'd been through, but something told me to stay alert. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. The whispers quieted, replaced by an eerie silence. I took a cautious step forward, my feet crunching on the frost-covered ground. The woods seemed to tighten around me, the shadows growing thicker. I felt a chill that went deeper than the cold air. I strained to see beyond the shadows. "Is someone there?" I called again, hoping for a response. Nothing, just the rustle of leaves, impossibly close. Then, without warning, a bird burst from the trees, flapping wildly into the night. I flinched, feeling the weight of something watching me. I pulled out the map again, the crumpled paper cold against my fingers. My mind raced. The X. It had to mean something. But what? I looked up, scanning the darkness, and there it was. The figure again, only closer this time. I could make out features, pale skin, hollow eyes staring right at me. "Who are you?" I whispered, gripped by a mix of fear and curiosity. The figure didn't move, its expression unreadable. Then, as if compelled by an unseen force, it pointed toward the woods. It felt like a challenge. My gut twisted, and my instincts screamed at me to run, yet part of me was pulled toward the figure, drawn like a moth to a flame. I hesitated, weighing my options. I had come this far. But what if stepping closer meant walking into a trap? Just then the whispers surged back, filling my mind with a chaotic rush. "Help us! Find it!" They echoed all around me, the sound growing louder as shadows danced at the edges of my vision. I faltered, breathing heavily as fear clawed at my throat. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to leave. Before I could think it through, I darted back to my car. Slamming the door shut, I cranked the engine and peered through the windshield, my heart racing. The figure was gone. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread, but that sense of safety was short-lived. My eyes landed on the map again, and I noticed a new marking I hadn't seen before. A small circle near the X, drawn in thick black ink, surrounded by jagged lines. What the hell was that? I leaned closer to the steering wheel, trying to make sense of it. The whispers grew louder outside, unintelligible words blending into a chaotic chorus. Panic surged fresh in my chest. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I had to go back, I realized. I had to understand the meaning of that circle and why I was being called here. But deep down, I felt the dread settle heavier as I contemplated a return to the woods. They would give me answers, or they would take me, just like they took so many others. Just as I was about to turn the car around, a flash of movement caught my eye. A shadow in the rearview mirror. My breath stopped. Someone, or something, was in the back seat. I spun around, but the interior was empty. The shadows were closing in, and I needed to act fast. I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus. The empty back seat felt more unsettling than the figure in the woods, and the car's confined space started to close in on me. I was on the brink of a panic attack, every instinct screaming to escape. Instead, I fumbled for the flashlight in the glove compartment, praying it wouldn't fail me now. Swinging the flashlight around the interior, I felt the beam quiver in my hand. Nothing, just the usual clutter. Old receipts, an empty water bottle, and the map. Maybe I was losing my mind after everything I'd encountered. I hadn't slept properly in days. But the whispers outside made it impossible to dismiss my fears. They were still there, looming in the shadows, faint but insistent. I grabbed the map, feeling it was my only guide. Back to the woods it was, whether I wanted to or not. The only way to silence the whispers was to confront whatever waited in the dark. With shaking hands, I put the car in gear and pulled out of the clearing, my heart pounding as I drove deeper into the woods again. As I approached the X marked on the map, the tension in the air thickened. The trees closed in tighter like a shroud, blocking out the light. I parked the car and stepped outside, cringing as the cool night air hit my skin. The atonal whispers surged again, as if welcoming my return. I followed the map, my footfalls muted on the damp ground. Each step felt weighted, as if the earth wanted to pull me down. There it was, the circle drawn with that menacing ink. It stood out against the rest of the map, radiating an energy I couldn't interpret. Then a flash caught my eye, a figure darting between the trees. It moved quickly and silently, leaving only rustling leaves in its wake. The fleeting vision shot a spike of dread through me. Was it the same figure, or something more sinister? "You can't hide from me!" I yelled out, the anxiety propelling me forward. I had to know what was out there. With each step, I felt the cold tendrils of fear wrapped tighter around me. I thought about turning back, but the pull toward the circle was magnetic. As I neared the marked spot, the atmosphere shifted. It felt charged, heavy with anticipation. I knelt down, examining the ground. Something glinted in the flashlight's beam. I brushed away the leaves, revealing an object, an old, rusted key, the kind that didn't fit any lock I could envision. I picked it up, its cold metal sending shivers down my spine. What were they hoping I'd find? What did it unlock? Just then, the whispers crescendoed, blending into an urgent chorus. "It's here. It's time." I stood up abruptly, feeling eyes bore into me from every direction. The woods, once still, now seemed alive with movement. I turned on my heel, adrenaline pumping, ready to flee, but something blocked my path. Standing in the narrow space between two trees was the figure from before, closer than I had dared to imagine. Hollow eyes glinted under the moonlight. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, the darkness pressing in around me like a heavy fog. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. The cold ground was soft beneath my fingers, retrieving my thoughts from the murky abyss of unconsciousness. Where was I? The memory of the figure rushed back as a knot tightened in my chest. I whipped my head around, hopeful I had just been dreaming. But the woods were still there, surrounding me in every direction. The usual sounds of the forest had vanished, leaving only an eerie silence, thick and oppressive. I blinked the leftover darkness from my eyes and reached for my flashlight. Fumbling through the debris, I finally found it tipped over in the damp leaves. When I clicked it on, the beam struggled at first, then burned bright enough to slice through the darkness. My heart sank. The circle I had seen earlier was just feet away, and at its center, the rusted key lay where I had dropped it. I hurriedly snatched it up, hoping it hadn't been a mistake to even come here. The whispers flitted around me again, a soft symphony of teasing noises. "This way. Come to us." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Someone or something was watching. I turned slowly, disliking how my gut churned. The shadows danced among the trees. Was I too late? Had whatever had kept me from reality moved on, or was it still lurking, ready to pounce? I took a few hesitant steps back towards the path where I'd entered. The stillness made my thoughts swarm with dread. A snap of twigs made me freeze. I wanted to run, but my feet were glued to the forest floor, a sense of dread tight in my throat. "Show yourself!" I shouted, my voice faltering but defiant. Silence responded, then another rustle. It was closer this time. With my heart in my throat, I pointed the flashlight in the direction of the noise. The beam caught a glimpse of a figure in the shadow. A girl with tangled hair and wide, hollow eyes. The same hollow eyes as before, but now filled with something else. Confusion? Desperation? "Help me," she whispered, barely audible. The words hung in the air, filled with a haunting urgency. Was this the entity I had felt all along? Some lost soul trapped in the woods? A chilling wind swept through the trees, wrapping around me like a vice. My instincts screamed to run, but would I be abandoning someone who might be in real danger? "I can't—" "What do you want?" I stammered, feeling foolish for speaking to a ghost or whatever she was. The girl took a step forward, her outlines smudging into darker shapes, her mouth opening wider, forming words that never came out. Instead of clarity, a deeper shadow engulfed both her and my thoughts. That's when the whispers intensified, swirling around me, drowning me with their insistence. "You must choose. You're the key." I stumbled back, heart racing. The woods were alive with movement again, branches creaking and shadows flickering. Everything felt like it shifted, gathering momentum towards something inevitable. What choice? What was the cost of being the key? Before I could wrestle with my thoughts, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Blood pounded in my ears. Then everything surged ahead, faster than I could comprehend. I needed to find out what lay ahead. Did I dare to step closer? My heart raced as I looked back at the girl, now fading into the dark. Where would this lead me? Would I ever find peace? The ground shook more violently, the tremors reverberating through my bones. I fought to keep my balance, fear clawing at my chest. Just when I thought I might fall, everything suddenly stilled. The whispers hushed, as if a veil had fallen over the woods, swallowing their voices whole. I hesitated, breath caught in my throat. Was I imagining it, or was there a path opening up before me? Dim light flickered at the edges of the darkness, inviting yet foreboding. Without thinking, I moved toward it, my flashlight flickering as if unsure whether to follow. The air was thick with tension as I stepped cautiously. The foliage around me shifted subtly, almost as if it were alive. Then, just beyond the light, I spotted something, an old wooden door embedded in a twisted tree trunk. It looked out of place, as if it had no right to be there. My pulse quickened. What lay behind it? The overwhelming urge to turn back clawed at me, but curiosity pushed forward. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting the girl to reappear. But the woods were devoid of any movement or sound. Just me and that door. Before I could think too long, I approached it. The key, cool and heavy in my hand, felt more substantial than ever. Was this what the whispers meant? I hesitated for only a moment, then slid the key into the rusty lock. It was a tight fit. But after a twist and a shove, I heard the gratifying click that sent a surge of adrenaline through my veins. I pulled the door open with a creak that echoed far too loudly in the silence. A staircase wound downward, darkness beckoning me from below. The scent of damp earth filled my nostrils. Was this a trap? I hesitated on the threshold, every instinct warning me to turn back, to flee. But the whispered invitation lingered, urging me deeper. "You're the key," I recalled, a fanged shiver snaking down my spine. What did that even mean? I took a tentative step down the staircase, heart pounding, every nerve alight with fear and trepidation. Shadows pooled at the edges of the beam of my flashlight, swallowing the faint glow as I ventured further. Then, just as I reached the third step down, something shifted behind me. I turned, nearly tripping in my rush, as the door slammed shut with a deafening thud, sealing my escape. Panic surged again, whirling in a dizzying spiral. It was too late now. I was in. Only darkness embraced me, unyielding and thick. I could hear the faint echoes of the girl's plea again. "Help me." It was almost a whisper, trailing behind me like a haunting melody. I squinted into the gloom. Was I supposed to help her? But at what cost? Then I saw it, a flicker of movement in the shadows. I could barely make out a figure crouched low, just out of the reach of my light. My breath caught. Was it the girl? Or something else entirely? That's when I discovered what it meant to be the key. Desperation pooled in my gut as I worked to suppress the rising panic. Whatever was hidden in the dark below was waiting for me. Whatever I had unlocked was about to reveal itself, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I took a step forward, drawn in against my better judgment. Would I regret this, or was this the only way to find peace? As I stepped further down, the air grew colder, each breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. I gripped the rail tightly, feeling its rough surface scrape against my palm. The flickering light seemed to challenge the darkness, but I could still feel reality slipping away. "Help me!" The voice echoed again, clearer now, but still distorted. I stopped, scanning the shadows for the source. It wrapped around me like a living creature, pulsating and breathing, urging me onward. The figure I had glimpsed earlier was still there, shifting just beyond my vision. "Who are you?" I called, my voice wavering. Silence greeted me, heavy and unnerving. I took another step, heart racing. Whatever was down here felt ancient, full of history, and pulsing with an unsettling energy. Then I saw her, a girl, her face illuminated by the dim light. She looked familiar, her dark hair tangling around a dirt-streaked face. But there was something wrong, something unsettling about her presence. I felt drawn to her, yet a wave of dread washed over me. "Can you help me?" she asked, her voice shaky and despairing. I hesitated, caught between fear and compassion. "What do you need?" "Get me out of here!" Her eyes were wide, shining with fright, but as I looked deeper I noticed something else, an odd glimmer that didn't belong. Before I could react, she pointed past me, her voice urgent. "Behind you!" I spun around, feeling a chill race down my spine. In the darkness, I saw a figure rise from the shadows, tall and unnaturally still. My breath hitched as it shifted, its eyes locking onto mine, two glowing embers in the void. "Leave her," it growled, a voice like gravel scraping together. Terror knotted in my stomach. I wanted to run, to flee back up the staircase, but the door behind me felt like a distant memory, locked away at the top of those steps. "I can't leave her," I shouted, panic surging within me. The girl looked at me, a flicker of hope flashing across her face. "Please, you have to trust me. She's not what she seems." The creature took a step forward, its movements deliberate and predatory. I could feel a sinister presence creeping into the air, wrapping around my throat like a noose. "You have to choose," it hissed, each word dripping with malice. What choice? My mind raced as I looked between the girl and the figure. If I helped one, would I condemn the other? "I'm not leaving her," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The girl nodded, a hint of something unspoken passing between us, but I could sense the threat behind me growing ever closer, the air crackling with danger. And then I saw it. Beyond the creature, a shadow moving, forming a new shape, something more than just fear. "Make your choice," the creature snarled, and I realized it would not wait for me to decide. In that moment, everything shifted. I had to act. With my heart racing and blood pounding in my ears, I lunged forward, grasping the girl's hand. Just as our fingers touched, the world around us erupted into chaos. It felt like the ground had split open beneath my feet, the darkness swirling around us, a vortex pulling us toward an unknown fate. And just before everything went dark, I caught one last glimpse of the creature's face, twisted and enraged. We weren't alone anymore. I could only hope that whatever lay ahead wouldn't bind us forever. I came to in a damp, dimly lit room. The air was thick, heavy with dampness, and I could hear the distant dripping of water somewhere nearby. Instinctively, I pulled my hand away from the girl's grasp, panic flooding back. "Where are we?" She blinked rapidly, looking around as if she were trying to piece together her surroundings. "I don't know. I thought you could get us out," she whispered, her voice shaky once more. I took a deep breath, focusing on the cold walls surrounding us. "We have to find a way out of here," I murmured, trying to think. My flashlight flickered uncertainly, casting long, wavy shadows against the walls. Before I could gather my thoughts, a soft laughter echoed through the room. My heart dropped. "This way," the girl said, trembling slightly. She pointed to a narrow passage, illuminated faintly with an eerie green glow. "Wait, is that safe?" I asked, hesitating. She nodded. "It's the only way." With nowhere else to go, I followed her into the passage, the fluorescent hue washing over us as we moved further inside. It twisted and turned, the sound of our footsteps muffled against the slick floor. Something about the glowing walls felt wrong, a sickly sweet allure that tugged at my senses. Then, from somewhere behind us, I heard it again, the gravelly growl of the creature. My breath quickened. It was alive, still pursuing us. "We need to hurry," I said, urgency creeping into my tone. As we ran, the passage opened into a larger chamber. Starlight from what seemed like an endless void flickered through an opening above. My heart sank. There were symbols etched into the walls, worn but visible, and they glowed faintly like the walls of the tunnel. "I've seen these before in a book," I stammered, trying to recall everything I had learned about myths and legends. The girl stepped closer, peering at the markings. "What do they mean?" "I think they're warnings," I realized, dread pooling in my stomach. Warnings about entities like that thing. Suddenly, the laughter rose again, echoing around us. It sounded closer now, more menacing. Panic clawed at my chest. I pointed to the opening above. "We can climb up, maybe find a way out there." She nodded, and together we scrambled toward the opening. But just as we reached it, a chilling wind swept through. The glow from the walls intensified, and I spun around. The creature stood at the entrance we had just fled, looming and monstrous, eyes aflame with fury. I froze. "What do we do?" I gasped. The girl's expression shifted, determination washing over her. "Distract it! I'll climb up first." "Are you crazy?" I almost shouted. "I'm not leaving you!" "I can handle this," she insisted, her voice fierce. We locked eyes, and in that moment I saw a spark of something. Was it power, or was it desperation? "Fine. Just be quick," I shouted, and without waiting I hurled a rock toward the beast, missing but catching its attention. It turned toward me, an unsettling snarl ripping through the air. But she had already started climbing, her movements quick and agile. That's when I saw it, the symbols glowing brighter, and the air thickening as shadows gathered. Whatever was happening, it was shifting, changing, as if the chamber itself held secrets waiting to be unleashed. Then everything exploded into chaos once more. "Keep moving!" I yelled, my instincts kicking in as I saw the creature lunge toward me, teeth bared. I could feel the walls closing in, suffocating in their silence, and my heart raced with the certainty that if we stayed here much longer, we might never escape. I barely had time to think as the creature charged forward. Its presence swallowed the dim light, and I took off, adrenaline flooding my veins. The girl was still climbing. I could only hope she made it out before it was too late. I skidded to the side, narrowly avoiding the beast's snapping jaws. For a moment I glanced back at the girl. She was scrambling higher, her feet finding small ledges. I gritted my teeth and ran toward the glowing symbols on the wall, desperate to find anything I could use as a distraction. The growl behind me intensified, resonating through the chamber like an earthquake. I grabbed a loose stone from the wall and hurled it sideways. It struck a part of the wall, sending small pebbles scattering. The creature turned, its glowing eyes narrowing on the sound. "Come on!" I shouted, watching as the girl's silhouette reached the opening. Just as she pulled herself over the ledge, the creature whirled back toward me, breaking into a furious sprint. "Jump!" she called down, urgency lacing her voice. I hesitated for a split second, a surge of fear coursing through me. What if I didn't make it? What if the opening was nothing more than a trap? But then I felt it, the ground beneath me trembling, like the chamber was alive. I turned back just as the monstrous figure lunged. With no other choice, I leapt toward the opening, praying for safety. I barely made it, my fingertips scraping the edge as I pulled myself up, breath ragged and heart pounding. The thing's claws slashed at the space I'd just occupied, inches from me. I stumbled into the new space, collapsing beside the girl. We were in another tunnel, narrower than the last, but the air felt different. It was dry and carried a faint scent of something sweet. "Did we lose it?" I gasped, glancing back. "I don't think so. It might follow us here," she replied, noticeably shaken. She pushed herself up, clearly not wanting to show weakness. I nodded, my focus shifting to the tunnel ahead. The walls were lined with strange carvings, similar to what we had seen before, but these felt more alive. I could almost hear whispers echoing within them, like they were trying to communicate. "What if they can help?" I suggested, uncertain but desperate for answers. The girl approached the nearest carving, tracing her fingers delicately over the surface. "They look like they tell a story," she murmured, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Maybe they can tell us how to defeat it." Just as she spoke, I heard the growl again, now echoing through this new tunnel. Panic gripped me anew. "We don't have time. We need to go." I grabbed her arm, tugging her toward the far end of the tunnel. "We can figure this out once we're safe," I insisted. She hesitated, her eyes still lingering on the carvings, but then nodded, letting me lead the way. We sprinted down the narrow passage, the sound of the creature's pursuit growing louder behind us. Then, as we rounded a corner, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. My breath caught in my throat. Stalactites hung from above, and the ground sparkled with crystals. But what held my attention was the massive altar at the center, decorated with more of the glowing symbols. "Look!" the girl gasped, rushing toward it. "Maybe it has something to do with the creature." But as we approached, a shadow fell over us. I turned just in time to see the creature bursting into the cavern, its eyes locked onto us with a deadly resolve. We were trapped. I could feel the weight of desperation pressing down on me as the creature stood in the doorway, its grotesque silhouette cutting off our escape. Panic bubbled in my chest, but there was no time to waste. The girl looked at me with wide eyes, fear and resolve dancing across her face. "Get behind the altar," I shouted, instinct taking over. The glowing symbols on the altar pulsed softly, almost beckoning us closer. We sprinted to its side, pressing our backs against the cold stone, hoping to shield ourselves. I could barely hear the beast's low growl over the thundering of my heart. "What do we do?" she whispered urgently, scanning the room, her breath quickening. "I don't know," I admitted, desperation creeping into my voice. "We have to find a way to stop it." As the creature stalked closer, its claws scraping against the stone floor, I glanced at the altar, desperately searching for something that could help us. The glowing symbols flickered, illuminating a faint etching at the center of the stone. A depiction of the very creature now looming before us, intertwined with a figure. Was that a girl? "Maybe it relates to you," I blurted out, realizing the significance. "You must be linked to whatever this is." The girl stepped closer to the altar, her eyes darting back and forth between the symbols and the creature. "What if it means I can control it?" Before I could respond, the creature lunged forward, its teeth bared, but the girl acted instinctively. "Get ready!" she yelled, stepping up to the altar and raising her hands toward the glowing carvings. I watched in disbelief as the symbols illuminated more brightly, casting sharp shadows across the room. The creature hesitated, a low growl rumbling in its throat, as if sensing the energy pulsing from the altar. "Please listen to me," she pleaded, her voice echoing against the cavern walls. "You don't have to be angry." To my surprise, the creature slowed, confusion flickering in its glowing eyes. It sunk back slightly, as if drawn by her words, the growl subsiding to a soft rumble. "It's working!" I shouted, hope igniting within me. But then the ground trembled again, a sudden shift that caught us both off guard. The cavern walls seemed to pulse with energy, and I felt the whispers returning, chaotic echoes drawing closer. "Help us. Free us." "What do they want?" I asked, glancing around, my instincts telling me we were losing control. "I don't know," she cried, her hands pressing harder against the altar. "I need to focus." The creature, still hesitant but increasingly confused, looked torn between its anger and curiosity. The whispers began to crescendo, a cacophony that invaded our minds. Suddenly, the cavern began to quake more violently. "We need to finish this, now!" I yelled, feeling the panic surge. "Do something!" she shouted back, pleading with her eyes. My heart raced as I grabbed a jagged crystal from the altar's edge, its light sharper than anything else around. "Maybe we can use this," I suggested, lifting the crystal high. Without thinking, I plunged it into the markings, feeling the shock of energy surge through me. The cavern exploded with light, the symbols glowing like stars all around us. The creature recoiled, its growl rising in pitch as I pressed harder against the altar. The whispers surged to a deafening roar. "Come on!" I begged, urging the girl to remain focused. "We can do this!" The roots of the cavern seemed to respond. The walls shimmered, illuminating more of the figures etched within. "You're part of this!" I yelled at her, feeling the swell of power coursing through both of us. "Help us!" the whispers urged. "What does it mean?" she shrieked, clutching my arm, the clarity fading as the creature seemed to falter, battling against some unseen force. "Maybe they want us to set them free." "I don't know how." In that moment, everything spiraled. Light enveloped us. The creature howled. The sound reverberated, a mix of defiance and surrender, and as the walls pulsed one final time, the altar shattered, sending shockwaves rippling through my core. In an instant, the cavern shifted. The creature was drawn toward fissures in the ground, swirling shadows pulling it closer, as if the cavern itself sought to reclaim it. Then, just like that, silence fell. The whispers quieted. The tremors ceased, and all that remained was a ghostly echo that trailed into the darkness. "What just happened?" I turned to the girl, breathless. "I think we freed them," she breathed, her gaze scanning the cavern. "But where are we now?" It was a question that lingered in the air, thick with uncertainty. Around us lay remnants of what had been twinkling crystals devoid of their previous energy, shadows stretching endlessly. The weight of what we'd faced settled heavy in my chest. But we were still here. Whatever we had released, whether it was help or destruction, the truth remained cloaked in ambiguity. "We should go," I suggested, taking the girl's hand and guiding her toward the opening from which we had come. Yet as we stepped into the passageway, a feeling hung in the air, a reminder that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Shadows danced at the corners of my vision as though the whispers were still watching, waiting for their time to resurface. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. We had escaped, but the woods and the secrets within them still called to me. As we emerged into the dim light of dawn, I took a deep breath, wishing I could tell myself it was the end. But truthfully, I knew I'd never be able to forget.